Okay, guys, how's it going? Hope all is well. So, we're going to be moving into Photoshop very shortly, but before we do, I wanted to spend a little bit of time in Illustrator talking about typography. So, hopefully, at this point, you've gone through the typography PDF lecture, and either if you've read or you've begun reading your chapter. If not, you want to get on top of that. The reason that I am taking a look at typography in Illustrator is because Illustrator's got really powerful typography tools, and also so does Photoshop. And I think that'll make a nice transition when we get over there to see how some of these tools are pretty much exactly the same. Anyway, Illustrator's got a bunch of different typography tools, and they're over here on the toolbar. If I go ahead and I find this, what we call the type tool, it looks like the letter T. If I click and hold down, I have the type tool, the area type tool, and type on a path, and then I have vertical versions of those things. Then I have the touch type tool. We're really going to focus on the top three tools, the type tool, the area type tool, and the type on a path, and we'll get back to the other ones in a little bit. So let's click on the regular type tool. There are two ways to create text in Illustrator. The first way is called paragraph text, which I will do right now. I'm going to literally click and drag a box just like that. So it's just like when we make a rectangle. And what I'll get is I'll have a little blinking eye there at me, and this is me typing out, misspelling text, typing out text in a text box in Adobe Illustrator. Illustrator. Exclamation point. Great. Now, anytime you are typing and you want to disengage from typing, you can do a couple things. You can come over here and you can select one of these tools. You have to actually click on them on the toolbar because you can't type V, because watch what happens. If you type V, hey, you get a V. So you can go ahead and click on one of these tools, or usually Escape will allow you to disengage from typing. So again, this is called a text box. Um, I would like to modify my type at the moment, and I can do it up here via the character palette. This little drop down right here. But I'm going to actually go to the character palette. So I'm going to go to Window. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, and the T's, to the one that's called Type, and I'm going to go to Character, or Command T. And the character palette opens up, and it gives me some options. It allows me to first choose a font. Okay, and there are tons of font families in my library. Depending on what version of Photoshop you have, what version of Illustrator you have, you may have more fonts than others. If you have the Creative Cloud, you have this thing called Typekit, which will allow you to automatically have like hundreds of fonts that we did not have available to us in CS6. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to change to a nice kind of sans serif font here called Avenir, right? So I'm going to click on that. Now, after I select the font, the font family name, I can change the font style here. So this is Avenir, and right now it's Roman style. So I'm going to click right here, and I have all these options. I have light oblique, which is basically just italic. I have book, I have Roman, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go to black so it stands out. It's more bold than bold. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Black is basically our bold here. Then heavy is our really, really bold. So I have those images, or excuse me, I have those options here. Now, underneath here, we have a bunch of different things to set the font size, the leading, the kerning, and the tracking. And then there's even more options here. So let's worry about font size first. Now, font is measured in points, again, per that PDF slideshow that you saw. And I'm going to increase this so we can really see what we have here. How about 36 points? There we are. Now, I could always go ahead and click on this drop-down menu, and I could pick one of these predetermined sizes, or I could go ahead and I could highlight this, and I could just type in what I want. So I do want it 36 though, so I'm going to put it back to that. Now over here we have what's called leading. Leading is that space in between your lines of text. So it's the, the spacing. So in between, this is me comma typing, and then out text and a text, right? We have this space here. By default, our leading is 20% the size of your type size, and they're linked. So if I go ahead and I increase the size of my type here, my leading will increase as well. Now, I try to follow a rule. It's a pretty simple rule, and it's not always going to work, but it's going to work a lot of the times. What essentially it is it's a good place to start when you're working with text, and that is my 5 up, 5 down rule. So I have 36 as my point size. I am going to go up 5 points. So if you add 5 to 36, that's going to be 41. Or if you take 5 away from 36, that's going to be 31. And usually speaking, I can find myself to be pretty happy with my leading somewhere between 5 up and 5 below the point size. So that's really tight. That's at 36 exactly. And here's at 41. So it's a little bit less than 20%, the 5 up, 5 down. And again, this isn't just a good starting place. When you're going ahead and you're playing around with text, it does not need to be the be-all, end-all solution. It's just a starting place. Now, what happens, that's 41, that's 40, so that's 4 up. I kind of like that. I think that looks nice. It feels like there's enough space in here between this descender of the P and then the lowercase t that falls directly below it. I think that that's enough space to be able to read this out, and it's actually readable. Now, what if I increase the font size? What happens? Oh, look at that. The leading doesn't change whatsoever. So that's kind of a, like a drag. So what if we change the size of the box? Oh, if we change the size of the box, it doesn't make our text bigger or smaller. In fact, what it does essentially is it makes it just kind of like the box moves around our text. So what does that mean? That means that be happy with your font size before you go ahead and adjust your leading. That's definitely what you want to do. Now, down here we have these things called kerning and tracking, okay? These have to deal with letter spacing. Now, if I have this selected and I click on kerning, I get auto, optical, metrics, and 0. Oh, okay, cool. I'll just make it 0. That looks good, I guess, which is kind of weird. Now I'm going to make my box a little bigger so that whole word illustrator comes out in one line of text. There we are. So how does kerning work? Well, we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's go to this one, tracking. Hey, cool, look, there's options. There's numbers and there's negative numbers. So the positive numbers will increase the space in between your letters in your text box. So the higher the number, the more space. The lower the number, the less space. So we start at 0 usually. And you can make the text get really close to one another and just go a lot tighter. So like I'll say like -50. And there it is. It's right on top of one another. I'll zoom in so we can see it a little bit better. That's not really good. It doesn't look successful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and increase it a little bit. -25, still kind of on top of one another. -10, -5. That looks pretty good. Now, you'll notice that some letters look really good next to one another, like the T and the H here. But then some letters seem kind of like a little farther away from one another, like the O and the B. And then there's this like space here in between this X and this T, probably could be a little bit bigger. So what do we do in those kinds of situations? Well, that's where actually kerning comes into play. Well, you're like, that's that thing that has like nothing on it. I just set it to 0. Correct. That's because kerning is local space in between letters, and tracking is global. Okay, so tracking affects everything. Kerning is only going to affect one spot, and to actually do it, you have to take your type tool, and you have to go ahead and you have to click in between some letters here. So let's see, what did I say was a little tight? This X and this T. I'm going to click right here in between the X and the T, and then all of a sudden, check it out. I got my negative numbers, I got my positive numbers. So I want a little bit more space between those two, so I'll just add a positive 5. And it moved a little bit, not much. So let's go ahead and we can do this a little bit further. And it's a slow moving animal. So I'm going to put it at about 20. This O and this B down here, I want them a little closer to one another. I'm going to just jump negative 50 and see what happens. It's a little too much. So maybe negative 35. And this will seem tedious at first, but this is what we call respecting type. A lot of times we just don't respect type because it's everywhere. It's like air. You don't respect oxygen, unfortunately, because there's a never-ending supply of it. If we were in a different, country, we would really respect water. But here in the United States, we don't because, again, it's just always available to us. And we don't respect type, unfortunately. It's because it's there and it's everywhere, and we can make it and we can change it and we can make it a different color and change its font and we can do all this sort of stuff. And because of that, we just, take it for granted. So as a designer, what you have to do is you've got to take the extra time and look where that extra space in between those letters seems a little off and fix it, okay? And it does take a little bit of time, but when you've done it a while, you can go really fast. So in the beginning, if you're kind of like, man, this is taking me forever, that's totally normal. And just know that once you, have a little bit more practice, that you're going to be able to fly through this as we go. So this, guys, this is paragraph text. Now, if I go ahead and I move my paragraph, the text moves, okay? If I rotate the paragraph, the text doesn't rotate with the paragraph. It just kind of reformats inside of that box. Okay, what if I make the paragraph box bigger? Okay, again, the text just kind of moved a little bit in there. If I make it smaller, oh wow, look at that, it even cut it off. So paragraph text can sometimes become a little tricky. And in our next video, we're going to take a look at point text instead.